You're listening to Packers Talk Network. PackersTalk.com.
Welcome to the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. I'm your host, Miles Teddick, joined by your co-host, Tim Hamilton. We are diehard Packers fans. We just love talking about the Pack. We're not here to get into all the national sports media headlines and talking points. We're sticking to real football, and we're sticking to the Packers. We're diving into the top topics around the Pack every week, breaking down games during the season and sorting through all the drama and the rumors of the offseason. If y'all want to support the podcast, please spike that like button for us. Give us a follow on all the socials and subscribe to the Packers Talk YouTube channel. All those things help us out greatly and do not take you very long or very much effort. Before we jump in, let's get a few words from our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans. You can find them on the web at ticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packers game tickets, go to packerstalk.com/tickets or browse their website at ticketking.com. Tim, good evening, sir. How you feeling?
Good evening, Miles. How are you? I like your little Ticket King intro because that's a good segue because I think they're going to be busy in a couple days with the schedule coming out this week. So get ready to all you Packer fans be calling Ticket King because you're going to be making your reservations and booking those tickets for the season. Schedule's coming out Wednesday night.
That's right, man. That's a good extra plug there for theticketking.com. But very good point, right? We got the schedule release coming up. We thought about maybe waiting and then doing our weekly episode on Wednesday night after the schedule release so we could talk about it, but we figured let's just go ahead and get on here now. We can maybe talk a little bit of potential schedule, look at the opponents if we want, speculate a little bit, but we'll get into it next week. There's going to be no shortage of opinions about the schedule when it comes out, no doubt about it. And at the end of the day, they got to play the game. So, we can have our opinions about it all day, and it's going to be what it's going to be. So we'll talk about it next week after it comes out, after the dust settles a little bit. We'll hear a few of the opinions, see which ones we think are worth talking about. We'll cover the schedule a little bit more next week. But should be some exciting matchups that we have to talk about and look forward to. I guess depending some of them on the time of year, maybe get a little bit more exciting. But is there anything that you're particularly looking forward to, Tim?
Yeah, I always get excited about it just because then we finally know who they're playing, when they're playing those games, and you kind of, see how it lays out for them. I mean, when the bye week is, what primetime games they have, if they're playing on any holidays, like they always seem to get holiday games, that sort of stuff. And it's just exciting because it's another, check mark as we get closer to the season, something else that we can discuss and dive into. So, yeah, it's exciting to see the actual schedule. We know who they're playing. We just don't know when exactly. But yeah, I'm always looking at the divisional games just because we play those teams twice and they're the most important games. And this year we're going to be seeing at least one new quarterback, Caleb Williams. We'll see him. We're probably going to see J.J. McCarthy in at least one of those Vikings games. So that's exciting. And then I think, it's pretty cool that they open in Brazil. They basically take away a road game because that's going to be a neutral site, if not more Packer fans there than Eagles fans. So you kind of are, they're going to have 9 home games for the first time, 7 on the road and a neutral site game. So it kind of breaks in their favor a little bit. So yeah, I mean, it's exciting to see. Interested to see, if they get a home game in week 2 after that trip to Brazil. I'm expecting I'll be pretty disappointed and angry if they don't. But yeah, and I want to see, are they playing on Thanksgiving again? Are they playing one of those Christmas games this year? Like they've gotten a couple, in the recent past. So those kind of things. I don't know. What about you? Are there any teams you're looking forward to seeing them play? Is there anything like you're hoping pops up on the schedule where they're hoping that they can completely avoid this year?
Yeah, that's probably a better one. Like, what are we wanting to avoid, right? I don't know. I was just trying to pull up the matchups. Do
Yeah,
you
I
have
have
the
them for
link
you.
to that? Is that on
I have.
Packers.com?
Yeah, so obviously the home games division. Then they have Arizona, San Francisco, Houston, Indianapolis, New Orleans, and Miami come to Lambeau. Away games, they go to the division. They go to LA to play the Rams, Seattle, Jacksonville, Tennessee, and then the Brazil game against the Eagles. So, Seattle and LA, you get a little travel there, and obviously the big travel down to Brazil. So there is some kind of fatigue there with two trips out west, and then the trip down to Brazil.
Yeah, so I pulled it up here. I'm looking at the home opponents right now. And I think, I've heard some folks talk about this might be the obvious one, but the Texans, man. When the Texans come to Lambeau, you got CJ Stroud coming in. That I think is super interesting. It seems like Jordan Love and CJ Stroud are the two on the rise as far as quarterbacks go, the two young guys, really came out last year. That one to me is fascinating. The 49ers is very obvious, right? Like there's kind of an inner what do you not division, but inner conference is the word I'm looking for. Interconference rivalry there with the Niners. So I like them coming to Lambeau. I like that we saw the ability of the Packers to go to San Francisco and give them as much fight as they could handle. So I wouldn't necessarily be as nervous about having to go to San Francisco. I'd almost kind of prefer it, get a little bit comfortable before the playoffs. But I like their odds against the Niners at Lambeau. So I think you've got a much better chance of winning that game. So I definitely all eyes on that game. But the Colts is another one that I like. I like that. I think that there's a lot of young talent on the Colts. I think they could have a little bit of a. I mean, it's really hard not to like any of these games. I guess the Dolphins too. Mike McDaniel's coming up, and him and LaFleur are buddies. So there's a lot of very interesting games at home this year. No doubt the division games. I'm excited to see how they position those at the end of the season. You usually get the season capped off with a matchup against the Vikings or the Bears. They might do that with the Lions now, since they seem to be probably another one of the better teams in the division at this point. But yeah, so I really like their home schedules. It's a tough schedule, but I think it's gonna be a really good, entertaining schedule. It's gonna be fun to see those teams come to Lambeau. And then as far as traveling goes, yeah, having to go to Seattle, having to go to LA, not really wild about either of those, but Tennessee and Jacksonville, those two don't really scare me much. So yeah, I mean, all in all, their schedule, and just from entertainment value perspective, it's going to be a great season. I think these are a lot of fun matchups to see. And some of these might get a lot more interesting depending on how close to the end of the year they are. But real quick, we got some feedback from our little clock was off. Sorry about that. I appreciate you keeping us honest, man. We were running a little late, but we're here. We're good. I will take the blame. I had to grab myself a little cup of coffee, a little pick me up to get through an evening podcast, but appreciate it. There are, and then also saying that there's going to be a lot of TV marquee matchups. I agree. I do. I definitely agree. I'm interested to see which one of these ends up being prime time. Again, that makes it a lot more interesting. Which one of these is going to be a stinker Thursday night game, because they'll get stuck with one of those. Tim, let's talk about that. Like, which one of these would you prefer to just call it a write-off, put it on Thursday night, and whatever happens happens?
Well, I mean, last year was a Detroit game, was a Thursday night one, and it didn't go so well for them. So, I could see them having a divisional one on Thursday. In fact, I mean, they even played the Lions twice on Thursday because they played them on Thanksgiving. So it could be a divisional game. I more prefer a home game, especially because, I mean, I would hope they wouldn't send them to LA or Seattle in a short week like that, because that's long travel and quite a turnaround to go from a Sunday game to a Thursday game. So I guess it would be a divisional game or Jacksonville or Tennessee on a Thursday if they went to a road game, but I would think it would be a home game and probably division. Maybe they throw New Orleans in there. They're not, that's not a real matchup that screams like, a primetime game that NBC would want or that they would want for Monday Night Football. So maybe it would be New Orleans or something like that if they got, if they had it at home again this year for the Thursday nighter. But he's right. Ours right. I think there's going to be a lot of national broadcast. I was surprised with how many they had last year with Jordan Love, and now obviously the back half of the year got boosted a little bit because they were, fighting for the playoffs to get in. But it was still kind of surprising how many games they still had on national TV last year. And I think they're going to have a ton this year because Detroit's good and they're coming off being in a championship game. So you can count on one of those Detroit games being either in prime time or it'll be the, 425 national broadcast game. I think the Miami game, San Francisco, those games could be national games. They always seem to get a Bears or Vikings game in a national window. So yeah, I mean, and obviously they start the season on a Friday night in Brazil, which is a national broadcast. So yeah, they're going to be on national TV quite a bit. There's not going to be too many, noon Central Time kickoff times next season.
Nope. Did I lose you there, Tim?
Oh, yeah, I think you did, but
we're back.
I'm here now. Yeah.
And we're back. Yeah, no, the schedule, I'm excited to see kind of how it shakes out. It definitely looks a lot different, based on who's where in Thursday night games, primetime games, beginning of the season versus end of the season. But all in all, it's like, who knows at this point. There's no way to speculate what will get when. I just think it's pretty common to expect, like, yeah, at the end there we'll have some division games. Again, I would probably predict the Lions there towards the end of the season. R says to quit dogging us with the away games in December. I'm with you, R. Let's put some away games at the front of the season. Give us some Lambeau games there at the end of the season. I vote for that. But yeah, so it'll be exciting to see how it shakes out on Wednesday. But that's not the only topic we've got. One thing that happened, I guess, right after our episode last week was the whole Austin Rivers thing with, I can take 30 players in the NBA right now and put them in the NFL, but you can't take 30 players from the NFL and put them in the NBA. Now, first of all, Tim, I know that we say we're not getting to national sports media talking points and headlines and all that nonsense, but I feel like we can at least bring this one down to the Packers. We won't talk about what we think and whether we think Austin Rivers is intelligent or not. But are there any current Packers you think could make it in the NBA?
No. I mean,
no? Okay.
If they stop playing today and they train for it for a while, maybe. I mean,
that has to be kind of the assumption, right? Like, you get a little bit of a cross-training period.
Yeah, they couldn't just stop today and all of a sudden go and try out tomorrow, that sort of thing. But, I mean, that's so hard to do. You're talking about in either sport, the NBA or the NFL. For sure. You're talking about the best of the best in the world at doing what they do. And I think it's kind of what the Rivers dude said was kind of insulting. Like, really?
Definitely insulting.
Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, no, you couldn't take 30 guys and put them in the NFL. Like, you have no idea. And I don't think you could take 30 guys in the NFL and put them in the NBA. But they're all...
Yeah, I don't think that's true. Yeah, I don't think it's true for either way.
They're all, phenomenal world-class athletes to do what they do at the professional level. So it's really hard to say, like, who could do it and who couldn't. If we're talking Packers, their biggest guy is 6'9". That's Caleb Jones. NBA, there's a lot of 6'9" dudes, so he wouldn't be the biggest guy in the NBA. But for somebody that big, maybe that gives him an advantage. Beyond that, I mean, you're looking for the elite of the elite athletes, and they have elite athletes, but they're elite football athletes. It's different in the NBA. So, could any of them do it? I don't know. I mean, Christian Watson is one that pops out.
He's the first one that comes to mind to me.
He's got size and he can jump.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I mean, Jair Alexander's got great athletic ability, but he's small. Like, what's he gonna do in the NBA? Like it's just it's so hard to say who could do it without like seeing that. Dontavian Wicks has great feet. We see him on his routes. It looks like a crossover.
Wicks might be a guy that could make it.
You got to be able to shoot. You got to be able to have the basketball movement skills, and these guys don't have that kind of thing. I mean, I go back, a former Packer, Devontae Adams was another one that we used to say, like, the way he came off the line of scrimmage was like a basketball player doing crossovers and stuff like that, and it was phenomenal. And I think he played basketball growing up, so maybe like a guy like Devontae could do it.
He talked about the NBA was definitely in his sights, and I can't remember what he said it was that made him go away from basketball over to football, but he's definitely one that seemed like he could have made it in the NBA.
Yeah, and I know there's been like tight ends in like Tony Gonzalez came up playing basketball, but I think he was
Antonio
like
Gates.
Antonio Gates. I think those guys, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think they were like bench players in college. Like they weren't even.
I don't even know.
Yeah,
I know they made the transition, but I don't know anything about their career. Yeah,
and I know there's guys in the NFL that played basketball or maybe like partially played basketball in college, and that's great and that's phenomenal. But like, there's hundreds of basketball players in all these colleges. Like, there's only a few that make it in the NBA. That's it's a completely different level. So
yeah,
I mean, it's possible with the right training, and we know that the Packers have a ton of great athletes. I mean, that's what they look for when they draft guys. So
very true.
But it's just so much. It's such a different sport to do and say that, and that's why the thing that Rivers said is just it's ridiculous.
Totally ridiculous. I reject it entirely, but I thought it was at least worth bringing up, and getting a jabs in there because I heard plenty of Packers folks have comments about it. I particularly enjoyed Nagler's comments. He retweeted and said, "What is an Austin Rivers?" So I thought that was pretty funny, but yeah. So it just off-season thoughts here, right? Some of these things come out and you just can't help but bite on them, and you're just like, all right, fine, let's talk about how dumb this one is. Sometimes, though, you got to avoid these things, right? Like, you can't fall for all of these things. And that's actually why we named this episode what we did, right? It's the Packers fans guide or survival guide for the offseason. Because there's a lot of traps out there. There's a lot of bait out there, and the social media world and they reward the engagement, right? So sometimes people just spout nonsensical things because they know everybody's going to jump in and tell them how dumb they are. And that was the point. So you want to watch out for those things, right? And our friends over at NFC North News on Twitter, you got to stop believing what they said. Did you catch the big thing that was going around from them this last week?
I don't think so.
So I'll see if I can pull it up here, NFC North News. But yeah, they got a lot of people with this one. They got a lot of people with a couple of them. But the first one was that Lambeau was going to allow vaping and smoking in the stands, essentially. Right? You're going to be able to, and let me see here. What did they specify? Here we go. Fans to smoke cigarettes, vapes, and Delta 8 pre-rolls in the stands during the games for the episode. Specifically, the Packers are allowing fans to do that at Lambeau. That is what they reported. That is not true. So if you just somehow heard me just say that thing, that is not true. But yeah, so that made its way around. And just to give you guys an idea, if you're like, oh gosh, these guys and their social media nonsense, that nonsense report got 10.7 million impressions. Wow. That got around. You talk about your fake news, folks. Right
there.
That's huge. It's insane, man. And here we are talking about it. But the fire's already been spread, so we're not helping anything at this point. But yeah, so that's why we're saying we need a little bit of a guide for the off season for Packers fans, because there's just a lot of nonsense you can waste your energy on. Chris popping in with us here. Good evening, sir. He says, "Hell yeah, fellas." Always good to see y'all popping in the comments with us. Fun to have you join us. But yeah, we're talking about the off-season guide. So Tim, what's your first piece of advice for someone navigating this brutal stretch of the off-season here?
Yeah, well, ignore ridiculous garbage like you just read. That's number one. But so we're a few weeks out from the draft. We get the schedule release in a couple days, which, that's a nice buzz. It's something to talk about. But then after that, we're going to get into like the real downtime of the offseason. Yeah, there's OTAs, and then there'll be mini camps. So there'll be some news and some things to talk about. Eventually, we'll get a contract extension for Jordan Love, and certain people are going to go crazy about it and say he's overpaid, which he won't be. But we're really going to get into that down period, especially into June and July before training camp. So now is a time where you're going to see a bunch of garbage out there on Twitter and all the other social medias. Just ignore the noise. Like, don't get into it. Don't worry about what the other teams, especially Bears and Vikings fans, because they seem to be the most vocal.
The most delusional.
Right. This is their time of year to celebrate and count their championships, because there's no games actually being played. And then once the game starts, it's back to reality. So let them have their time. Just ignore it. Don't bring yourself into that. Just follow and read and watch people who know what they're talking about and aren't trying to bring, the clickbait or the stupid arguments that so many other people do, and just focus on the Packers. And also, don't get too far ahead of yourself. Like, don't start worrying about what may happen in November, or what if this guy doesn't do that and then this guy doesn't. Like, it's all going to play itself out.
Right.
This is really only the very, very beginning with the off-season program and mini camp and all that stuff. Like, there's so much we don't know. And there's so many different scenarios for everything that could happen at every position with every player.
Yep.
It all works itself out. And that's what a lot of training camp in the preseason's for. And then when the real football starts in September, that's when we really see what the team's going to be. But just stay in the moment. Enjoy the team that you have, because the Packers are really talented, and they're really, we talked all last season about how young they are. They're probably going to be younger this year.
Right.
It's incredible. And just enjoy that moment and be hopeful for the season ahead. There's been very little drama this offseason, and I think it's going to continue. So be happy about that. We don't have to worry about our quarterback, being in a darkness retreat or any of that garbage. So just block out the noise, enjoy the team that you have, wishful thinking, and be hopeful for 2024. And, I can't wait for training camp. I'm excited to see, what comes out of OTAs, minicamp, whatever. But the real football starts at training camp. So we'll get there. It's going to take some time. But just ignore all the garbage and all the noise out there.
Totally. Yeah, definitely do that. And, again, if something strikes you as so stupid that you have to tell them how stupid they are, that's one. That's like the flag. Like, oh, okay, this is the thing. I'll just steer clear of this one. But Tyler Streber jumping back in with us. Good evening, sir. Brings up a good topic here as far as we're reminding you that the Jordan Love contract is coming around the corner. Can you touch on Goff's contract today? First, as a Packer fan, Tyler says he loves it because Goff is mid, and putting that much into him is hilarious. Definitely, for me, reminiscent of Kirk Cousins and Jay Cutler. But he says, 2, how much does that drive the price up for Jordan? I'll just say doesn't matter. You can't overpay Jordan Love right now. Like, I don't think, except for maybe C.J. Stroud, I don't think anybody's needle is pointed higher than his. So, yeah, I think your first point is right on. Right, you've got I'll give him a little bit better than mid, but basically a mid quarterback that is making not mid money, and that's going to hurt the Lions eventually. We've seen that happen time and time again with these big contracts, and I haven't gone in and overanalyzed the contract, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's just a stupid contract. I mean, Goff's played well, and the Lions probably don't have a prospect of finding a better quarterback than him anytime soon. So yeah, I mean, lock him up, but it's one of those that as Packers fans, like I said, it's kind of like Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. It's kind of like Jay Cutler in Chicago. You can sit back and sort of chuckle and go, okay. But, I think it does probably drive up Love's price a little bit, but I don't think that it's some kind of surprise, right? Like, I don't think Goot and the end squad are sitting there going, oh, dang, now that like totally blows up the plan that for what we were going to offer, Jordan. It may adjust it a little bit, but I don't think that there's too much that it's going to impact. Honestly, I think they are going to throw everything at Jordan Love. They're not going to give this a chance to be a thing. They're going to make sure that the message is loud and clear. He's the guy, lead the team, building around you, and go win one for us, buddy. That's what I think. I don't know. What do you think, Tim? You think it changes anything?
No, not really. Like, I'm sure Jordan Love's agent is really happy today with the numbers that came out, but I don't think it changes it much because I think they were going to be in that range of what Goff's getting anyway, even before his numbers came out. Like, I don't think it changes it significantly. We'll see what the real numbers are. Of course, the first numbers that come out come from the agent, and then eventually when the contract gets filed, we really see it. So some of it's probably fluff. Right. But even still, he got paid. And I guess that helps Jordan Love's case, but I'm betting they're already pretty far in the negotiations where they knew where they were going to be anyway, and this isn't really going to change much at all. So Jordan Love's going to get paid, and there's going to be people that overreact and say it's too much too soon. But you have to pay your quarterback, and when you think you have a special one, and they do, you have to pay him, and this is what the market price is. This is what the going rate is. And that's what they're going to have to pay for it. They're not going to get, a hometown discount. They're not going to, get a discount where they can say, look, he only played 9 really good games. We have to wait and see longer. You wait and see longer, the price is only going to go up a lot more. So if you believe in them, and they do, and they should, now's the time to pay them. So, yeah, I don't think it changed anything. And as far as Jared Goff goes, I mean, I'll give him credit. He's played a lot better for the Lions than I thought when they made that trade to get him for Stafford. I'm not saying he's a great quarterback, far from it, but he beat my expectations. I didn't think he was going to last there very long. I actually figured he'd already be gone and they'd have the next quarterback by now. And I'm not trying to take a shot at him. I think
he doesn't look like a special quarterback in my opinion.
Right. Like, I think he was lucky to get Sean McVay, and he's lucky to have Ben Johnson in Detroit. And they set up the system perfectly, and he's dropped back and run the play, throw to the guy that's open within the first read or two. I think when you play the better teams, or when he can't, when the guys aren't open for him, he's not a special guy that's going to elevate the rest of the team and, take them over the top. He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Josh Allen. He's not terrible. But he's kind of like he's kind of like a Kirk Cousins, where they can put up some really fancy numbers and some really nice numbers at times, but there's a ceiling to what he is. And, Jared Goff is what he is right now. He's not going to get better. So can they win a Super Bowl with him? They got close to getting there last year, but I have my doubts. I don't think they ever will. And I think they're going to be a good team with them, but it's nice to see that they have a quarterback that, isn't a superstar. He isn't a difference maker like Mahomes, like Josh Allen, like some of these other quartatu who are. So,
he doesn't strike fear in you, right? It's like,
no,
oh, no. Like, how are you going to stop him?
No, not at all.
Yeah, so I that's where I'm just like, cool, and you kind of get it because it's like the league is such a way that if you have a quarterback, you have to treat him, like he's a top 5, top 10 guy, whether he is or not, because it's so hard to find a quarterback. It's so hard to find a guy that, has what it takes to lead and to physically do the job and all of that. So I get it, and it's sort of the same thing that happened with the Cowboys. I've made that reference a few times with Dak Prescott. There were a lot of Cowboys fans when they gave Dak Prescott his first extension that were already out on Dak Prescott. They were already saying he's not the guy. And you're looking at it going, yeah, but how do you not re-sign the guy? Like you're in this place of like, maybe you're right. Maybe he's not the guy, but how do you not re-sign him? And that's where I think the Lions are with Goff. It's like, is this the guy 10 years from now? Probably not. But, he's the guy right now for sure. So how do you not? And so, for your point, as far as RG, does RG3 ring a bell? Yeah, I think paying a lot of guys, can be a pretty risky business, especially a guy like RG3. And, we can get all into how poorly run the Washington organization has historically been and certainly was at the time. But I think that's a little bit different, and I don't know if you're referring to Goff or to Jordan Love for that, but either one, I don't think either one is being put nearly at risk like RG3 was in that Washington system. I mean, he was running all over the place, getting beat up, and he also had some philosophical disagreements with in the offensive scheme and everything. Like, just it's kind of apples to oranges, but. The Lions like Goff, and they believe in the guy, so great, but yeah, he's not somebody that you're sitting over here getting, like you're afraid of for the next 10 years as a Packers fan. Yeah. So I'm cool with it. Good job. Lock up as much of that salary cap as y'all can, Detroit. But Tyler makes a good point here. Wasn't the Mahomes contract like 10 years team friendly? Do you think Packers and Love structure something like that? Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that it makes much sense. I guess it could make more sense for Love, but not for the team. It makes more sense for the team to go longer, certainly. And there's probably, if I had to guess, if there was a disagreement that they're trying to wrestle on, it would be that. The shorter the contract, to an extent, the better for Jordan Love, right? Because we know how volatile this market is, but 4 years from now, 54 a year might not be a lot. And if he is top of the market, then he probably will want the ability to renegotiate in that time. So, yeah, I would imagine the Packers are trying to lock him up as long as they can. He's probably trying to say, maybe not that long.
Yeah, but, and I think the Mahomes thing, like the 10-year deal, like when he did it, it was like they were calling it record breaking and all this stuff, and it turned out it really wasn't that good of a deal for him. And there's already been talk that they're going to renegotiate it to give him more money because so many quarterbacks have signed better average per year money than he has since he signed that contract. So, yeah, I don't see them doing a 10-year deal with Jordan Love. I think it's probably 4 or 5 years. Maybe they do more than that, but it's not going to be, the 10 years Mahomes deal that he got. And I don't think it's going to be anything that we look at and say it's team friendly, at least initially. Maybe, a couple of years from now, it may look that way, but I think it's going to be fair market price for what you're paying a franchise quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Packers have been good at this. They were really good at it with Rodgers. They navigated it pretty well, even at the end when it was kind of ridiculous. So I've got faith that the front office is going to do what they do and take care of that business. But it is interesting to see how these things play out. And, it's like, yeah, the longer they wait, the more the price goes up. They were only recently able to start or to offer him or start negotiating or something like that. Wasn't it in May?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, the process really only just began technically. So there's really no reason to be concerned for why it hasn't been done yet. And, as far as Goff impacting it, Goff signing now, they were probably never going to get it done before Goff, even if they wanted to, so that's where it's like, you just can't really hold too much against it or, about it. You can look at it and go, I wonder how this impacts it. But You probably have a little bit more of a point in looking at the Mahomes contract and studying that, just because there's probably a lot more conviction in Love long term than there is from Detroit for Goff long term. Want to throw someone else up here? We got Matthew Tan joining us, Packers fan here. When's the best time to get Packers tickets? That's a good question, man. So I will say, little fan experience here. It kind of depends on how the season's going, right? And it's going to depend on who they're playing when. So, division games are always going to cost a little bit more. The sooner you can get tickets to a game, probably the better, because once the season starts and there's the more playoff implications are on a game, the more it's going to cost you. There's probably a little bit of a spike after the schedule comes out, so you might let that blow by. I don't know. I can't say that I've watched that super close every year. But yeah, definitely keep an eye on it. If you're talking about going to the Packers-Rams game, the price of that game, I would say, is definitely going to depend on the time of year it is. Like, if they're playing them in September, it's not going to be the same price as it would be in December. So we'll have to see how that goes, man. Keep an eye on that when it comes out on Wednesday. And then Matthew also has a question: how good will the Packers be this upcoming season? That's a fun question, right? I think we could ask that question all off season long. I don't think anybody here is going to tell you they're going to be bad. I'm very and maybe we can allude to this a little bit, because we're going to talk about our favorite position battles coming up. That might be a segment to listen to for our optimism about this upcoming season. You're not getting any record predictions out of me yet. I'm not doing it. It's too early, and
it's way too early.
Yeah, we gotta pump the brakes on that. Not ready to do that one yet, but we will do that eventually. But I think they'll be good. I mean, they should absolutely be in playoff contention. Growth is never fully linear, so some players could take steps backwards, some will take steps forwards. Who those players are, I think, will have a big impact on whether they play well or not. If Jordan Love takes a big step backwards, that could be a problem for this team this season. I don't think that'll happen. But yeah, so I think they'll be pretty darn good this season, man. What are your thoughts on that, Tim?
Yeah, I'm very optimistic. I think they're going to be pretty good, and I'm with you. I think playoff contention, division championship contention, start there, and then anything beyond that, let's wait until we get a little closer to the season before we talk about how far they could go in the playoffs. But yeah, I'm definitely optimistic. I think sitting here, when we started doing our podcast last August or July, whenever the first one kicked off, we didn't really know what was going on, and that was really close to the season because so many things were unknown. First time starting quarterback, all the youth, particularly on offense. It was like, who knows? I think this year we have a better handle, but like you said, like guys that we thought were, going to be really good players last season, maybe they don't progress and they take a step back. Or maybe there's, some lack of fire that they think they accomplished something last year and they let the league catch up to them, or they let other guys on the roster pass them. You can't get complacent. So yeah, it's an unknown, but I think roster wise, team wise, what these guys can do, feel a whole lot better about it right now than I did at this time last year. So very optimistic, very encouraged for what they can be. And I definitely think, at least playoff team, the potential for a deep playoff run is there. But yeah, I don't want to do how far are they going to go or how many games they're going to win or anything like that yet. It's still too early for that. But yeah, I think they can be pretty good.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of reasons to be optimistic, especially in comparison to this time last offseason. So many more unknowns last offseason than this one. But yeah, my optimism is straight up, man. I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be, making a run at the Super Bowl after what they did last year. But yeah, not everything's linear. Steps backwards happen, so you just never know. Injuries happen too. That could derail a season. You just never know. But yeah, I'd say all signs are pointing upwards. And then But, as we were talking about the Jordan Love contract, I want to go back to some of these comments. We got a couple of predictions as far as, what might that negotiation look like. R here says, Love will probably want 4 for $215 million or so, including incentives, and then be able to renegotiate again at 30. I think that makes sense. He probably would want that. I think the Packers want him for more than 4 years, if I had to guess. And Tyler agrees with that. 7 years, $385 million, $55 a year, something like that. I think that's probably what the Packers are aiming at. I don't know if he'll agree to that. You might end up with 5 or 6 years, somewhere in there. But I do think the per year is probably going to be in that 55 range. That's where it's like they may actually be okay with resetting the market and letting with Jordan Love. Who knows? I think that it's hard to predict that. That's where we talk about not wanting to try to predict things in the draft process. That same thing here. It's like trying to predict who wants what in a negotiation is pretty tough. There's a million different combinations of how that could go, but I would believe that the Packers would be okay with resetting the market for him and putting him at the top of it and giving him that 55 a year. I think the length of the contract is probably what it comes to. But
yeah, I think if they want to, like you said, reset the market, I think maybe they say, all right, we'll do this, but you got to give us another year or two on the contract, because then that allows them to be able to wait a little longer to hopefully give him another contract after that, which who knows by that time what the market will be. But so yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I'm with you there. I think it's 55 million might be it. I think it's somewhere between that 52 to 55 million a year that he's going to get.
It'll be interesting. Should happen soon. We'll see.
Yeah.
But R with his thoughts on how good the Packers will be. 10 or 11 wins, good with that in a tough schedule. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty reasonable prediction there. Get them in the playoffs. Not necessarily guaranteed an NFC North championship, but my bias says it'll happen. But yeah, I think that's a pretty fair prediction. And then Rev Trev popping in with us. Good evening, sir. Says even if Jordan Love does what he did last year, we will tear it up, or tear up most of the league. Excuse me. Either way, same thing.
I like your thinking.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you jumping in with us, Rev. I totally agree with you. And then Tyler here, Packers over-under in Vegas is at 9.5. Okay, all right. Colin Cowherd was on saying he was going to hammer the over on that. I would too. I think 10 is in for the – okay, well. You know what? I don't like Cowherd very much. I used to, and then lately I feel like he got a little bit more clickbaity.
Big time.
And it's hard not to agree with him, though. It's like, yeah, 10 wins seems like it should happen.
If Cowherd's saying it, though, that worries me, because you never want to go with what he's saying. That scares me, because I see 9.5 and I'm like, yeah, I would definitely go over too. But if Cowherd's saying it, I don't know about that.
He just snake bite us? Is that what just happened?
Yeah, that's the jinx.
Dang, man.
So now I'm worried.
Get out of here. Look what you did, Tyler. Look what you did. You cursed our show, man. Come on.
Yeah,
no, I'm kidding. Yeah, I will say this for Cowherd, and this, I'm going deep in the bag on this one, but before the Packers played the Steelers in the Super Bowl back in the 2010 season, 2011, the guarantee gong? He did the guarantee gong that the Packers would beat the Steelers in the Super Bowl, and he was right about that. So, we'll give him a little bit of grace there. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, where we're sitting, 9.5 the over seems pretty reasonable to me. A lot can still change. Who knows? A lot of offseason left to play. But R says, let's see here. I just hope that Matt LaFleur can help them get off to a good start. Yes, please let us not have the slow starts. We avoided that last year, right? Came out with a good bang against the Chicago Bears to remind them who the owners really are. So, at least it wasn't the same thing as it was the previous, 3 seasons or something like that, where they just got smacked in the first game. So yeah, definitely want to get off to a fast start this season. Let's have a repeat of that that opener last year, but this time it's in Brazil, and we get to push around the Eagles a little bit, remind them who's boss in the NFC. Let's see here. Matthew's jumping in with us with another comment. Hope Josh Jacobs is the legit running back of the week. Yeah, man, I think he is. I don't know that you could have found a better replacement for Aaron Jones. Now, listen, I didn't want to lose Aaron Jones. We've had this conversation. Nobody wanted to lose Aaron Jones. But if you're going to replace him with somebody, I don't know that you could have really done much better than that. So, no, I guess you could have made a run at McCaffrey last year, but the haul for him was not worth it, in my opinion. We can debate that at some point if we have to. But, yeah, I mean, getting Josh Jacobs in the offseason for a pretty reasonable contract and no draft compensation or anything like that, that's hard to argue with, man.
No, I agree. I think he's legit, and I think he's going to be a really good replacement for Aaron Jones. It sucks to lose Aaron Jones. We talked about it.
Right.
It was a tough situation, but I think they might upgrade it, then they're going to have him for more than 1 year. So, and I don't think Aaron Jones, even if he was back, was going to play more than 1 year in Green Bay. So, yeah, I'm really excited to see Josh Jacobs. I think he's going to be, have a really big impact for the team next season.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and him with Lloyd and even AJ Dillon. I mean, you got to really like the running back room right now. It's as strong as I can remember it being. But yeah, so very exciting there as far as that goes. And then let's see here. I love this comment from our. There is so much hopium this time of year. Don't bet player props this time of year. No doubt. And the hopium is not any stronger anywhere else other than with the Chicago Bears and the Minnesota Vikings fans. Talk about hopium. Goodness gracious. Their fans are the ones that need a guide to the offseason. But we'll fight with them a different day. We don't have to do that right now. But yeah, so then Tyler says, he hopes that LaFleur starts the starters or plays the starters in the preseason like he did. No coincidence that they looked that good against the Bears. Yeah, totally agree. Week 1 should not be a preseason game. I agree. And I am sure that he took note of that, and we actually, that was the beginning of this podcast, was the, essentially training camp of last year. And that was one of the first things that we talked about was LaFleur bringing in the Patriots for their combined practices and essentially getting to pick Bill Belichick's brain for a week. And, so I think that LaFleur is hyper observant and kind of aware of the operations and how what runs well and what doesn't. Certainly the way he approached preseason for so long there ended up looking like an issue. But, I don't think there's also a coincidence that number 12 was in town then. And I just think things ran different when Rodgers was here. Whether you like it or not, agree with it or not, whatever it is, we certainly know that Goot was instructed to do his job a little differently. And we're seeing that play out now, at least the differences from what it was with Rodgers' input. So, yeah, I think there was a lot of that, of let's not ruin Rodgers' routine. He's the MVP. Don't mess it up. And it's hard to argue with that, right? Like, guys playing at the top of the game, giving you the best chance you can to win the Super Bowl, keep them happy. It didn't work, right? They tried that routine. It didn't work. So now we're getting to see what they are doing without, the unintended outside influence of a player with heavy influence who can carry that. But, yeah, so I think that you probably will see that again this year. Not only that, all of these players are so young. So even if they are starters and, seasoned vets going into their third season, they still need reps. That's not a lot of reps. 2 seasons, 1 season, that's not a lot of reps. So there's still a case to be made for a lot of these guys to get in there, especially on defense with a new defensive system, new defensive coordinator, all of that. So there's a lot going on there, a lot to look forward to and hope for sure. What do you think about that, Tim? Anything come to mind for you as far as how MLF is running things?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. I think they most likely. I would be really surprised if they don't play their starters like they did last preseason.
Me too.
Maybe not quite as much as they did last season, but I think they definitely will play him. It isn't going to be one of those scenarios like when Rodgers was here and he didn't play at all in the preseason, and a lot of the other veterans didn't either. I think they're going to play him. Last year Jordan Love got a lot of reps in the 3 preseason games. Maybe they scale it back a little bit, but he's going to play. I would be really surprised if he doesn't play. And your point about they're a young team, like these guys need that experience. They need their live reps, even though it's preseason reps. They still need that action against other teams, and the defense too. Like you said, it's a new system with new coaches, new coordinator. They need to get on there. They're not going to be showing too much, but they still need to get out there against the live offense. Maybe you see guys like Preston Smith. Maybe he doesn't play a ton, or Jair, or Rashawn Gary, Kenny Clark, guys like that. Maybe don't play a ton or at all. But I think, at least offensively, we see the starters and probably see them quite a bit. Maybe not at the level of last year, but they're going to play them, and I think they should. And whether or not that was the reason why they played well the first game against the Bears, who knows? I think it probably had a little bit of something to do with it, but it couldn't have hurt. It definitely didn't hurt anything. Um, but LaFleur saw what he did, what happened, because they lost some games early in the season, previous times when they were resting their starters. So now he did a different way because he had a new quarterback, a lot of new young players, and he saw the benefit of winning that first game. So yeah, I think it's a change, that started last year that's going to continue this year as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. And if it doesn't, it'll be interesting to say the least. I don't know why you wouldn't do that, to be honest. So
Yeah, I don't know either.
But so I think they'll get off to a fast start. Which speaking of fast starts, it is a little bit of a unique start being in Brazil. So RevTrev says, "Will the Packers beat the Eagles in Week 1?" Of course, obviously. I mean, it's definitely just got to happen. And of course, we pointed this out before too. The last time the Packers opened the season on the road against the Philadelphia Eagles, they won the Super Bowl. So that obviously has to happen next, right? We're writing the NFL script for them right now.
It's got to happen.
It's got to happen. But so there you go, Rev. Anybody disagree? Anybody think that that the Eagles, are just gonna be too much for the Packers in Brazil? Let us know in the comments. But I don't see it. I don't know why this feels like kind of a home game for the Packers. Obviously, there's a strong fan base down there in Brazil, but it just seems like everybody, like from fans to players to front office, they all want to play in Brazil. Where I can definitely say it didn't feel like that when they went to London. London felt like a little bit more of a, oh man, we have to do this. So we'll make the best of it. But yeah, with this, everybody seems really excited to go to Brazil. So I got good vibes about that. That's all I can really explain. I don't know, Tim, you think it's going to be a tough game down there? What do you think?
Yeah, it's going to be a tough game. I think the Eagles are going to be pretty good. But and we're so far out, I don't want to break them down too much. But
Yeah.
I'm not scared of the game, and I'm not sitting here like, oh man, there's no way they can win. This is a really tough opponent. No, they go down there. It's going to be a neutral field, though. From the sound of things, there's a lot of Packer fans that are going to be at the game down there. A lot of Brazil Packer fans, so it might be a stadium full of Packer fans. And it's nice not to have a true road game in Philly. So now you get a neutral site game. You only have 7 true road games. I'll take that as a extra bonus there with 9 home games.
Heck yeah.
So yeah, it's the Eagles. They're going to probably be a pretty good team. I expect them to bounce back. We'll see how much they bounce back from last season. I can't sit here and be like, yeah, no doubt about it, they're going to win. But I'm also not at all scared of that game. It's actually a good game to start off the season with. I think we'll find out a lot about the Packers in that game, and what's in store for them for the season.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'm excited though. I feel like that's easy to hype up for LaFleur, similar to the way that opening at Soldier Field is pretty easy to hype up.
Yeah.
So I don't think we'll have to worry too much about them coming out flat.
No, and like you said, the London trip was different. Like Rogers was pushing for that. He wanted to go, but it seemed like everyone else with the organization was treating it as such a chore and such a hassle. LaFleur, the other coaches, some of the other, like it just seemed like it was something that they had no interest in doing. And this one's a little different. Maybe as it gets closer, it might sound like that as well. But I think part of the benefit is you get it out of the way week one. It's not kind of in the middle of your schedule, and you have to figure out, do we want to buy afterwards? Do we not want to buy? Like, it's a lot of travel, which sucks. They're probably going to get the benefit of a home game the following week. And you can prepare for it now all off season, knowing that you're doing it week one. So I think that's to the Packers' benefit, and
Yeah.
they need to embrace it more this time because it didn't help things when they did embrace it when they went to London.
That's true. Yeah, I agree with that. Attitude can really affect a lot of things, and I think there's something to be said for the fact that this team is so young and mostly close in age. I think that helps a lot. But yeah, it being at the beginning of the season, it becomes easier to overcome if there are problems. If there is a whatever, you go out flat, you just lose the game, whatever it is. So yeah, I agree with that. One point here that R brings up, wondering how devoted LaFleur can be to the run game. Do we just go 4 or 5 wide and throw our butts off? Here's what's fun, and we can maybe go a little deeper into this. Maybe we'll have like an episode kind of about schemes and how this roster of players can enhance the schemes on both the offense and the defense. We should be very, very excited about this offensive scheme and the players that are being injected into it. I don't think you got worse anywhere. And I think the one place you would look is, wow, you lost Aaron Jones. Like we said, you replaced him with Josh Jacobs, with Lloyd, with A.J. Dillon still being there, and you still have C.J. Wilson. So, there's a lot of talent in that room, but across the board, the rest of the board, the weapons are intriguing because you have a lot of different types of weapons. A defense is built to cover certain things. A defense is not built to cover everything all at once. So, that's where this will give defenses nightmares because they will have to game plan to cover essentially everything all at once. They're going to have to be able to cover a 4 or 5 wide situation, whether that's 4 or 5 wide with receivers or 4 or 5 wide with a couple tight ends and receivers, or 4 or 5 wide with tight ends, receivers, and running backs. There's a whole range of things you can do with these guys and their skill sets, and we got a taste of it last year. We didn't even really get we got like an appetizer. We didn't get the full course. For one, it's injuries, but two, when you have, we've talked about Christian Watson and his ability to take the top off. When you have that, but then you also have guys like Wicks and Reed coming into their second year. They're getting a full off season. I think folks have pointed out they're working out together, which is kind of exciting. But you have these guys now not at a point where they're trying to learn the fundamentals of the scheme. Now they're trying to learn and strategize the finer points of the scheme and how to manipulate the scheme to beat different things that they struggled with, right? You can strategize more once you're out of the learning phase that they were in last year. So when you have that, you've got a majority of the offenses in veteran hands now. They may be young veterans, but they're veterans. That's you plug a few other guys into that, like we said, Josh Jacobs, Lloyd. The offensive line probably even gets more athletic, I think. The sky's the limit on what Matt LaFleur can do with that. So as far as like how devoted can he be to the running game versus the pass game, it all is built on complementing each other. So they will do this to set up that. They'll run this pass to set up this run. And the more capable your guys are, the more combinations of those setups that you've got. So that's really what's exciting about this. And like I said, we can go pretty deep into that topic, and maybe we will in one of these off-season episodes, but we should all be very, very excited. There's really not a reason to question, well, can they use this guy? Will they have enough for this guy? This is gonna be a fun offense to watch, and I think one comparison I can draw that's just a component of it. It's not even really the whole thing, but if you know, I'm having to think about how long ago this is now. This is like 10 years ago now. If you're old enough to have been watching the Packers 10 years ago, I guess most of our audience probably is. You remember the play actions to Jordy Nelson, right? Rodgers to Nelson. Those play action concepts were so deadly, man. Like defenses just could not handle that. And it's a combination of abilities, right? It's Rodgers' ability to sell what he's got. It's the threat of the run, which they had, a strong running game then. And then you got Jordy Nelson's ability, not only just route running, but athleticism. He was fast. So it was kind of poetic when it worked right. And it was really fun to watch. And that's why it was really devastating when Jordy got injured and then ultimately left the Packers. And so that's what I would say is that's kind of a piece of that, right? Like there's a lot now that they can do when you have two very capable tight ends. You're probably going to have three capable running backs regardless of what the combination is. Your receiver room is as deep as it needs to be. There's just so much you can do there. And I'm sorry, Tim, I got long-winded, man. Is there anything else you wanted to throw on top of that as far as like what LaFleur can scheme with?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the running game, from the question, how devoted can he be? I don't know if we've really seen the true offense yet, because when you had Rodgers, as far as the running game goes, when you had Rodgers, they were never going to be devoted to the running game because Rodgers dictates what you're going to do, and they want to throw the ball, and as they should. He won 2 MVPs. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback. They're going to be a pass-first team. And now with Jordan Love, his first year as a starter, most of the season, he didn't have a healthy Aaron Jones. So that kind of decides for you how much you can do in a running game, because A.J. Dillon wasn't very good last year. And when you have Aaron Jones, who was, missing several games, not at full strength for other games, that impacts how much you can run the ball. And we saw when he came back late in the year and was healthy, how good of a running back he could still be. And I thought they ran the ball enough in those games down the stretch. I mean, when he was 100-yard game after 100-yard game for the last 4 or 5 games of the season, I thought their running game looked really good. And they also had offensive line problems for most of the season. So they're going to be a pass-first team, as every team is nowadays, because they have the quarterback, they have the weapons. But I think having a healthy, hopefully a healthy and durable running back in Jacobs, he's also a bigger back. And I think throughout Jones's career with McCarthy and then with LaFleur, there was always that hesitation to really feed him the ball game after game because of his size, lack of size, and because he would get nicked up here and there. I think with Jacobs, you have a bigger back that has shown with the Raiders that you can feed him the ball over and over again and remain durable. So I think they will be able to run the ball more. And I think also just improving the room overall with Jacobs, with Lloyd now being, the third-round pick coming in. I think they can do more in the running game. And, again, I don't think they're going to be a pass-first team. It's not going to be some kind of big shift or anything like that. But I think they have that ability, as long as Jacobs is healthy, to have games where you're more of a run team than you are a pass team. And it's going to help set up things in the passing game as well.
Totally. So that's what's really exciting about it. If you're wondering, how do you spread the ball around? How do you commit to this, whatever it is, when you look at the skill sets, that's what's going to tell the story. And you're absolutely right, Tim. And we actually, I will admit to being wrong about how I thought they would approach the running back room this offseason. I thought, first of all, I never thought they would sign the top of the market free agent running back. That just was totally out of my ballpark. But once they did that, and then you got Dillon that they scooped up. It's like, well, you got your big guys. Dillon's as big as he is, almost 250. Jacobs is 220, 225. So you think, all right, well, go get your smaller, faster guy, your Jalen Wright maybe type guy. And they didn't. They basically went out and copy and pasted Josh Jacobs, the 220 fast, athletic running back. That's what's interesting to me is these guys are versatile, right? These are pass-catching running backs. These are guys who they do well in these one-cut systems. And I'll say, as far as A.J. Dillon goes, he's a guy that you root for. You want him to be better than he is, and he's just good enough to be good for the team. And what I mean by that, he's good in pass pro. He's good in understanding his assignments and being one of the best 11 guys out there. And then you give him the ball in his hands, and his vision's just not great, right? He doesn't see the holes that Aaron Jones sees. And he certainly doesn't have that same burst that an Aaron Jones has to be able to, even if he does see those smaller holes, to actually burst into them and get through. Because he's a bigger guy. You can't blame him. I think we've all wanted to see him use his weight a little bit more and run a little bit more like a 250-pound guy, and that criticism is fair. But, what they really need, though, is these kind of versatile backs that are big enough to take a beating but shifty enough to get out in space and move around to really take full advantage of the LaFleur system. And I don't want to sound too much like we're making excuses for LaFleur. And Tyler makes a point here. I don't think you sign Jacobs and draft Lloyd if you don't plan to run the ball. That said, LaFleur tends to tighten up in games and abandon the run early if it doesn't work. That is dead on the money. And I think even LaFleur has admitted as much, not in so many words, but you hear him say, we got frustrated by it a few times. Yeah, I got to do better. Yeah, I got to do better. And what he means by that is he is the play caller, and he does get emotional in his play calling. We've totally seen that before. And, it's I hate to compare it to this because this is just kind of an exaggerated comparison, but it's it's like when you're playing Madden and something either works or it doesn't, and you just got to make up for it, right? And that's what it feels like he tries to do sometimes, is get all of his points back on one play, or if he's behind, he abandons the run. Those things, those are things that you hope LaFleur is getting better at as a coach, kind of like a player should get better at something in the offseason, right? They study their tape, they get in the weight room. LaFleur should be studying himself and analyzing some of those mistakes that he's made, and I wouldn't put it past him. I would imagine that he is.
I hope so.
Me too. But as far as the system goes, you're going to have, the sky is the limit. The combinations of things that they're going to be able to do with this offense are going to be just nasty, and I can't wait. I'm very, very excited about that. He says it here. I hope that he uses the backs and short game pass aggressively. It helps a lot late in the season with the weather. Yeah, exactly. Get them out moving in space.
It seems like they're going to, because LaFleur's mentioned a couple times since they signed Jacobs, and I think Jacobs mentioned it too when he met with the media, about being used in the passing game more. That they did it at times with the Raiders, but not that often, and that's something LaFleur's talked about. Like, they want to use him more in the passing game, and I think Lloyd too is a guy like that you can use in the passing game. So yeah, I would think they're going to use the backs more than what we've seen potentially in the past in the passing game.
Yeah, and that's where it opens up screens. And again, I'll point back to the offensive line. You've got more athletic guys there cycling in. The guys that they drafted are athletes. And then, when you have a guy who can, make a pull, get to the other side of the line, and do those things in time, it opens up your schemes and your strategies a lot. So it'll be very interesting. And one of the topics we actually wanted to make sure we got to tonight was position battles that we're most looking forward to. And a few of you have already pitched into that. I think, I can't remember, was it Tyler that said, oh, yeah, Tyler's looking forward to Pratt versus Clifford. And I don't know if you're joking about that, but I'm looking forward to that battle. I'm definitely looking forward to that battle. But yeah, I don't know, Tim, what's your top battle you're looking forward to?
Well, besides long snapper that we're all looking forward to.
Yeah, Peter Bowden still hasn't got back to us, but I think he's just busy. He'll get back to us.
He's busy. Keep working.
Yeah.
To me, it's the offensive line and the corners, because the offensive line, we're probably going to see competition at right guard, and then it's a matter of how everybody else is now going to shake out. Are they going to move Zach Tom? I'm hoping they leave him at right tackle, but there's a possibility they move him. Where's Jordan Morgan going to fit in? Jacob Monk, how are you going to fit all these pieces? Where are you going to, they always talk about the best five. Well, who are the best five? Who are they, and where are you lining them up at? Because they like the versatility and moving everybody around. So offensive line is going to be really interesting to me to follow throughout training camp and preseason. And then on the other side of the ball, it's cornerback. We know Jair's locked in there, but Eric Stokes, Carrington Valentine on the outside. Is Stokes able to be healthy and get back to the form that we saw in his rookie year? Does Valentine make a jump in his second year? And then nickel, they signed Keyshawn Nixon. They paid him a good amount of money. He's going to be the starting nickel most likely, but can somebody challenge him? Maybe Bullard, who did it at Georgia. He was a safety, but he had a season in 2022 where he was pretty much exclusively a nickel. Does he challenge? Does Kalen King challenge? Or
sounds like Evan Williams might.
Evan Williams, so how's Halfway going to use his defense? Maybe there's not a true every down nickel cornerback like what Keyshawn Nixon was last season. Maybe it's Keyshawn Nixon plays at certain times. Maybe some other guys slide in there in other packages. How does that shake out? But yeah, for me, offensive line and quarterback are the two that besides long snapper, obviously, that I'm most interested in seeing. What about you?
Nice. Hey, I'm looking forward to that QB2 battle, man. That's an important one. No, I think that the defensive backfield is an interesting situation, and it's not really a matter of hierarchy that I'm interested in. It really is more like who ends up where. And it sounds like Stokes is on a good track, and LaFleur made the comments it's night and day compared to last year where he was this time, so that's good to hear. Again, coming down to things that they don't have to say. He could say, yeah, he's doing good. We'll see how he does in training camp. Or he could say he looks night and day different from this time last year. So I thought that was a good sign that he should at least have a shot to be out there in training camp competing for a spot and hopefully locking down one of those top 2 spots because he's that good. But you've got enough guys who are not just bodies out there, right? You've got enough guys that you can trust whoever wins the nickel job is probably going to be the right guy for the job, because it's not just a draft pick. It's Nixon. It's even maybe Anthony Johnson Jr., right? Bullard, Williams. You've got a handful of guys that are going to get a shot at that position. So yeah, I'm interested to see not only who wins that battle, but who's in that battle. Not everybody will be in it at the same time. It'll come down to a few. Outside of that, I think it'll be really interesting, and this is me just being kind of biased for my position, the receivers. I am very, very interested in the receiver battle for 5 and 6. Bo Melton, Malik Heath. I want to see them be what they look like they could be, because that, to me, it's just like, dang, like these guys look pretty good, like they don't look like guys who should be fighting for 5 and 6, maybe 3, 4, or even 2 and 3. So I'm excited for that, to see how that shakes out and just where that receiver room lands. I don't think you're going to see any huge shakeups as far as like, oh, Christian Watson got cut or, something like that. I think it really shakes out right now, and it's pretty set that, on the outside you've got Watson and Dobbs. On the inside you've got Reed, and then you've got Wicks that really can rotate around to all of those top 3 receiver positions, and then 5 and 6 behind those guys. That's the way it looks, and in those top 4, I just don't see a whole lot changing. Each of those guys has their own role. So that's why I say, like, the bottom half, I think it'll be really interesting to see who rises, who really pushes the competition, and what that looks like. But that's going to be a heated room in training camp. I'm looking forward to that one. And I'd like to say offensive line, but I think that's kind of an easy answer. There's really not a big competition at tight end, although let's see here, who was it? Let me bring up the right comment here. You guys, you're going nuts in the comments here. I love it. I can't find the comment I'm looking for. Tyler, here we go. They think they'll use Dillon as the H-back to replace DeGuara. Wouldn't be surprised if they kept all 4 with that plan. That makes sense to me. That makes a lot of sense to me. DeGuara was probably a little bit more of a tight end coming into the NFL than he was an H-back. And he probably just never overcame that H-back learning curve. And Dylan's used to being in the backfield. So, that could work. We'll see how that shakes out. I could see that being a way to keep Dylan and also your other guys at running back. Let's see here. What other competitions are we looking at in the comments? I can't even keep up. You guys are – I appreciate it. Love it that you guys are going nuts in there. But, there's a lot of competition. The running back room comes to mind. I think, again, it's one of those – it's like you kind of get how it's settled, Josh Jacobs will be running back 1. Lloyd will very likely be running back 2. A.J. Dillon will probably have a special role carved out for him as he's a good leadership presence and good enough to be on the team in some capacity. And then, how much does Emmanuel Wilson, contribute? How much of a role does he demand? Because I think that he will either make it easy to cut him or he'll make it impossible to cut him. I think that's the way you go with him. So that one will be pretty intense, I would imagine, that competition. But the thing that you've got everywhere is competition. You can't look at a spot on this roster and say there's no competition. That it's everywhere. So I'm just excited about that in particular, that there's not a spot where it's like, well, there's not really. I guess I did say tight ends. There's not a lot of competition. But there, I guess, I don't know if I want to say there doesn't need to be.
The third tight end, I guess. There's Ben Sims, Tyler Davis, who they seem to really like, but. I mean, we talked about it after the draft when they added 11 draft picks. Like, it increased the competition all over the roster. So
it did.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting in training camp to see how it all shakes out, because they added a lot of guys through the draft, obviously the free agent additions, and then you're developing these guys that are going in their second or third year. So yeah, there's competition really at every position all over the roster, and that's awesome to see.
Absolutely. I like this comment from R. Bullard will not be denied playing time. He is going to be fantastic. I like that attitude. I agree. Yeah. Definitely agree with that. Bullard he seems like a dog, man. He's not a Georgia Bulldog, just a dog. Like he's one of those guys you want on your side, and I'm glad he's on our side. Matthew says, is Jeff Hafley worth the money? Well, Matthew, if he helps us win a Super Bowl, you pay him whatever he wants. I'll say that much. The thing about coordinators and coaches is they don't count against the salary cap. So it's one of those things. It's like, shoot, man, if you can help us win games, we'll pay you whatever it takes. So hopefully he is worth the money. I don't know that they broke the bank for him. I think he's probably making a decent amount. I don't think they broke any records or anything. I don't know about his contract. But hopefully he demands an extension because he's so good. Let's see here. And then any other comments? Loving our Malik Heath shout out. That guy is a bully. I'm a big Malik Heath fan. I was last offseason, last training camp. I'm a firm believer in bully ball. I want receivers out there that just push DBs around and make their day hell. And he is one of those guys. He's one of those guys you don't even want to try to tackle him. He's a bigger guy, and he's just mean. So I love that guy. I hope he finds some good playing time. The defensive line will be a good competition from Matthew, and linebackers as well. I didn't bring up linebackers, although you're not wrong as far as that competition goes. It's just a matter of, like, the top two are probably pretty well determined. I don't know that Hopper or McDuffie are going to really challenge those starting roles. I think they'll be good complementary guys, and if they do need to play, you probably don't have a huge drop-off from the starters. Defensive line will be interesting. I think your starters are pretty well set, but at the same time, there's top to bottom, that room is deep. The guys at the bottom of that depth chart will demand some playing time, so that'll be fun to watch. And then, of course, the kicker competition. I'm not overlooking it, guys. I'm building up the drama to the most important competition of the training camp here. Now, one thing I'll say about the kicker competition, I'm rooting for Anders not Anders. What's his name? Anders is his brother, right? Or is it?
No, it's Anders.
It's Anders.
It's Anders.
Yeah. It's Anders Carr. Anders is our guy. I can't remember what the other Carlson is now. But anyway, I'm rooting for our guy. I'm rooting for Carlson. I will say I see the guys in the USFL booting it from 60 or whatever. I wouldn't hate that. Bring those guys in for competition. I think there's one kicker in the USFL that's made like a couple. Like he's got one from 60, one from 62, a couple in the 50s. Wouldn't hate that guy coming in. They brought in, was it the Vikings former kicker?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Greg
whatever.
Joseph. So, I mean, I think like somebody mentioned it too in the comments. Is it a real competition? I think that's a legit competition. Now, if it plays out and it's a tie or something, the tie is going to go to Carlson. He'll make the team. I think they're going to really have to beat out Carlson, but I think he's getting pushed for his job. And if he doesn't have a good training camp, they're either going to go with one of the other kickers on the roster or they're going to find one from somebody else's roster. Like, I think he's got to prove that he's making improvements and is going to be a more reliable kicker next season. I think they want to keep him. They would prefer, obviously, they spent a draft pick on him. He's got a big leg. But, yeah, I think he legitimately has to prove himself. I don't think it's just, them doing it for show or anything like that or just to push him. I'm surprised they still have 3 kickers on the roster. I don't know why you need a third one, but I would think between now and training camp, somebody gets cut.
Probably.
And I get maybe it's Carlson, maybe it's Greg Joseph that is the kicker, but I think they'll look around the league too and see what these other teams, that have their own kicker competitions, how those kickers look in the preseason and compare it to what they have. And then that'll kind of determine whether or not they bring somebody else in or if it's one of their guys on the roster that make it or that win the competition. But I think it's still going to end up being Carlson in the end. But I think it's legit competition for him. I think I don't think they want to mess around with that position for another year. He got his 1 year and it didn't go so well, especially down the stretch with all the missed extra points. But they spent a draft pick on him, so I think they would prefer not to cut him.
Yeah,
but they're not going to mess around. He's not going to get another year of trying to figure it out and adapt to the NFL. Like, that's over. He's got to perform now.
Yeah, I agree, and that's been the theme for Goot. He wants to stack the competition in these rooms. So I'm glad that he's not sitting on the kicker and not including him in that. Right? He's very much making sure it's known that this is going to be competition. And I think I said it before, competition does breed success. You get the best out of people when they're competing against each other. And so I think that they probably still believe that Carlson's got, the potential and probably the most likelihood to win the job. But you have to make him compete for it in order for him to achieve that. I think that's probably the way they see it. And if you can't win the job, then shoot, it's a good thing that you've got somebody else in there competing with him.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah, I still am rooting for Carlson. I think last year we saw it. He's got a leg, man. He's got an absolute leg, and so you just focus it in and probably have to work on the mentals a little bit. Kicker is a very psychological thing. It's kind of like your golf swing, from what I've heard from kickers anyway. And you tweak here, tweak there. You're constantly second guessing yourself, and so it's not all just a physical thing. But as guys get older and with reps, they get more consistent. I think that's why Mason Crosby ended up having such a good career. Is you just hone in that swing of the leg, and you eventually can do it the same every time. But we got a bunch of young guys now, so you got to reset that. Hopefully Carlson can, but. Yeah, it'll be a very interesting one. I don't think that I'll say this. I don't think that the Packers will be in a position where the kicker is the reason that they missed the playoffs. And I'm just knock on all the wood. We're not going to jinx anything here tonight. So there we go. But it doesn't feel like that's where they are. Could be totally wrong. Have been wrong about a few things already. So hopefully, like I said, we didn't just jinx us. But there's a lot of competition, position battles to look forward to. It's hard to not have DBs at the top of that list just because of how it all, your biggest gap is at safety still. How is it all going to play out? Your biggest unknowns, that's where they are. And then probably the O-line as well. How does that all shake out? But we still have a couple of months before we get to learn that. It'll fly by. It's only a few episodes of this podcast. It's not that many.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, if you look at it that's a positive way to look at it. A few more episodes to get through, and it's training camp.
Yeah. Yeah, think about that, guys. I know it's May, and I know we still have the worst part of the offseason to get through, but it's really only a few podcast episodes away.
That's right.
But yeah, so we named this episode the Packers Fan Offseason Survival Guide for a reason, because, it can be tough to survive the offseason, especially when we get to this point. Thank you, our darkness retreat. That's where we are. We're in the darkness retreat of the offseason. But we're not having to deal with darkness retreats anymore. Our quarterback is off building chemistry with his teammates, and we can be confident of that. And so are the receivers. We at least know for sure that Wicks and Reed are working out together. So, yeah, we're in a good place. And so, we started off by talking about some things as far as surviving the offseason. Just avoid the nonsense. Unfollow NFC North News on any of these socials that you might follow them on. They told you could smoke weed at Lambeau Field this season, so we just know that they're not right. Okay, they're not true. It's not real. You can't do that. Don't go into Lambeau with something rolled up thinking you can smoke it. It's not going to happen. You're going to get in trouble. That's what'll happen. So don't do that. And definitely don't follow that account and don't fall for their shenanigans like a lot of people do. But for the most part, don't try to predict the future. You'll notice that we dodge that a lot on here, and, we don't do the mock drafts. We don't do the draft grades. We don't do a lot of these things. We'll get down to it, and we'll talk about predicting records and stuff at some point, once we're in training camp maybe. But we're not trying to predict the future. We're just going to sit here. We're going to give you analysis of what's going on and what it looks like, right? Like try to put some reality to it, some logic to it, and just see what goes on there. But we're going to make it through this off season together. We're going to have some fun while we do it. And most of all, we're going to enjoy the fact that we are not Bears fans or Vikings fans, and Lions fans for that matter, but we won't pick on them too much because they're actually having fun for the first time ever. So we'll give them their moment. But yeah, the Bears fans are up to their usual nonsense of deciding that they're Super Bowl or bust next year, as they're on their 5th rookie quarterback in 7 years, something like that. So they're delusional. We're going to let them be delusional. Check in on your friends if they're Bears fans. Make sure they're okay. Some of them aren't doing so good. Some of them are in rough shape. But, they're doing their normal thing. We'll get to the season. They'll wake up and they'll remember that the Bears do, in fact, still suck. And so will the Vikings. But no, Matthew, you ask if we have any fantasy football advice. When the season boots up, we might throw a few of those segments in there, but we are not going to claim to be your fantasy football experts or anything like that. I do play fantasy football every year. I'm usually in 2 or 3 leagues. Tim, what do you do? Do you usually get into it?
I used to be really into it, but I've stopped over the last couple of years. I find I don't have enough time, and
it's a lot.
Yeah, and some people that are really into it, it's just I can't keep up with it. So it was too much. So no, but we can definitely give some advice. Whether you want to use that advice or not is up to you. But maybe wait till we get a little closer to the season.
Well, the good news is Matthew, you got a few episodes to decide if you think we're a couple of morons or not before you want to take our fantasy football advice. Yeah, Clint Stoner swinging in with us. Good to see you, sir. And the Bears do still suck. Love that. Love seeing that. But yeah, so, that's the guide to surviving the offseason. Appreciate that you're not a Bears fan or a Vikings fan. You have a franchise quarterback. You have a very competitive roster with competition up and down the roster. There's a lot of reasons to be excited about the road ahead. And you don't have a salary cap disaster. You don't have a depletion of draft picks ahead. You don't have a lot of things that a lot of other teams and fans have to worry about and deal with and wonder, what the heck is actually going on out there. The Packers are just trying to win games, man. We can see it. They're out there. They're what do they say? I'm trying to keep up with the kids in their lingo. They're standing on business right now. I think I said that right. But yeah, so have fun this offseason, Packers fans. That's the real survival guide for the offseason. Have some fun, kick your feet up, watch some highlights from last season and get excited about what's coming this season. Watch some highlights from your favorite draft picks if you need to. There's still time for that. and again, have some fun with it, but stop trying to predict the future. Any of you people with your crystal balls talking about who's going to do what or never can do this or that, you just don't know. You have no idea. And I have all the tolerance in the world for optimism, but you could take your pessimism to somebody else's podcast. So if you think that, this person's not going to do this person's not going to do that, we'll respect your opinion, but we're not here about talking about negative things. We're talking about positive things. We're having fun as Packer fans. The Super Bowl window is open. It's wide open. The future is bright. We're just having a good time with that. So that's what we're going to be doing this offseason. Did I miss anything, Tim?
I think you covered it.
Okay. So we're not falling for nonsense. We're unfollowing NFC North news. We're not listening to them tell us that we can smoke cigarettes and weed at Lambeau. And we're just going to kick back and have fun and appreciate that the Bears still suck. So I think that's pretty easy. When you break it down to some simple steps, it's not too bad. And then Matthew asks, when's the next show? We are streaming live every Monday evening at 9:30 p.m. Central Time. Sir, please jump in and join us. We're going to do that every week. We might, I don't know, we'll see if Tim's up to it, see if I can pull it off. We might do a reaction episode this week when the schedule comes out on Wednesday. Otherwise, we'll have those reactions next Monday evening, and we can go through it all then. But, we always appreciate y'all hanging out with us on the Packers Weekly Podcast. We're part of PackersTalk.com network. Check us out on YouTube, Twix, that's Twitter and X, because that's how we're calling it these days. That makes the most sense. Facebook and Instagram. Spike that like button for us if you enjoyed the episode, and please subscribe to the Packers Talk YouTube channel. Those things help us out quite a bit. Don't take you too much. It's free for you. And we certainly, like I said, appreciate y'all hanging out with us, and we will see y'all next week, Packers fans. Go